Hey friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and it's been a little while since I've put a video out for you guys. I know some of you were worried. You left some messages last week wondering where we were, and I had left a note on the community area of my page mentioning that I kind of took Mother's Day off. Earlier last week, Adam and I got away for our first time since we've had children. It was, I think, January of 2007 was the last time we went away overnight. So it's been 17 years, over 17 years. And so we were able to get away just for about 36 hours. It's nice now. We have children that are older that can help manage some of the chores on the homestead in our absence. And it was just a good phase with Hannah right now that we were able to slip away and my parents were able to help out with the children. So it was just a blessing. We had a wonderful time getting away. But because we were away for part of the week and then we had Mother's Day things coming up, I just didn't have time to put out a video last week. And this video is the one that I had planned for last week, so I decided to go ahead and share this information with you today. I had been wanting to do a Q&A video. We haven't done one in a while, and I know questions start to accumulate. I had put another note in the community area asking for your questions, and so we are just going to dive in and tackle those today. I have about 20 questions. I don't know how many I'm going to get through, but we'll just see what we can do if I don't ramble a little too much. So let's go ahead and get started. Have we ever considered adding meat rabbits to the homestead? And yes, it is something that we've considered. I do realize that they are a fast-growing, really prolific source of protein. We haven't added that yet just because rabbit isn't necessarily our favorite form of meat. Adam and the older boys do some hunting every year. They can hunt for rabbit on our property. We have an area that's wooded that is full of rabbits in the winter. And so I know a lot of people have said wild rabbit tastes better than domestic rabbit that we would, raise here for meat, but rabbit that we have tasted so far isn't necessarily our favorite. It is something in the future that, maybe if we had the time or energy to take on more projects, that would probably be the next protein source that I would focus on because, we're already doing our beef and our poultry. We're not interested in doing our own pork anytime soon. So rabbit would probably be the next thing we would consider. But I think at this stage in life, we're kind of maxed out on our capacity to take on new projects. We're very content with what we're doing now, and we just want to get more efficient at what we're doing before we add anything else. So that's why we haven't added them yet, but maybe in the future. It's definitely, we're open to it as a possibility. So the question is, do the older children ever go out and get drive-through food with friends? I'm assuming that means fast food. And do they ever verbalize wanting more grocery store food at home? So that's two parts we'll split into. One of my older children can't eat food outside of our home. He has anaphylactic food allergies, and so he can't go to restaurants. He can't go through fast food places. There's too high of a risk of cross-contamination. This is why we can't even have his allergens, which are dairy and peanuts, in our home, because there's just a risk that maybe there's some residue from some butter or some milk or something that could end up on a pot or a pan or a dish. And if that were cross-contaminated with his food, he can go into anaphylaxis and die, frankly. So he will not be eating at restaurants or anything so long as that is the case. And his brother, they're only 17 months apart in age, and they have the same friend group, and they kind of do the same things together. And so David doesn't really go out to restaurants either. But I will say that all of our children, besides Gabriel, who has the food allergies, do go to restaurants with Adam or with grandparents or with cousins, aunts, and uncles and things throughout the year at various times. So at a minimum, it would just be like on their birthdays or at sleepovers with their grandparents. But there are times where my girls, for example, a few weeks ago went over to a friend's house. They had a play date there and they ate, I think, pizza that was ordered for delivery while they were there. So the children do get the opportunity to eat food that isn't from inside the house. They enjoy that. But to be honest, there are some of my children that they get digestive issues or stomach problems if they eat some of that food, like fast food. So I think it's taught them that these foods are nice as a treat, they taste good, but they may not be the best thing for their bodies. And so It's not like the second part of the question, do they ever verbalize wanting more grocery store food or fast food or things like that? I don't think it's something that they are actively pining for every day because they know how they feel when they eat that stuff. But I also don't want to give the impression that we don't ever have grocery store food in our house. I have done food hauls for you guys, bulk foods from Azure Standard, which is the big bulk of our grocery store spending every month. But the other half of our grocery store spending comes from grocery stores like Aldi and Walmart and Sam's Club, and I've shared some of those hauls with you before. And those do contain grocery store food. You know, we might have crackers and chips and ice cream and fruit gummies and things like that. Now, I tend to try to do organic or ones that have ingredients that are a little less questionable or toxic or whatever. But they do eat that food, and there are seasons of life that maybe get busy or where I'm not feeling well, like first trimester of pregnancy or something, where those foods become a higher part of our diet. And then there are seasons of life where we don't eat that stuff very often at all. But I think my children don't necessarily, they're not going out of their way to like ask me for grocery store foods because we eat treats here all the time. I mean, if my kids want cookies, I bake them cookies or they make cookies. If they want snack foods, we make snacks. They pretty much get whatever foods that they want. I just try to make them homemade if possible, but I do keep convenience foods on hand for them. Here's another question I guess I've really never touched on, but I get it quite often. What are my hobbies and interests? You know, I think a lot of people assume I must have hobbies outside of what I share on here, and honestly, I don't, and that's going to sound pathetic, but hear me out. When I was a young mother, decided to be a stay-at-home mother, I had a choice. You, as a stay-at-home mother, have the opportunity to pretty much shape your days how you want them to look. You know, you can do whatever you want with your time. If you don't like to cook, you can outsource that and spend your time doing other things. If you like to get outside, you can take your kids to the park every day. You can set your life up in a way that fuels your passions and interests. One of my big hobbies and interests is learning. I've always loved to learn. I love to like watch documentaries and read books, and I've always been kind of a trivia nerd. When I was little, I watched Jeopardy every day and read encyclopedias, and I was in Quiz Bowl as a kid, all of those kinds of things. I loved that kind of stuff. So I started homeschooling my kids. I mean, that's a huge outlet for me. I get to learn alongside my kids. We, as part of their school, watch documentaries together and discuss them. And so it's like part of my hobbies have become my job with my children. And that's not the only way I set my life up to fuel my hobbies. I love to cook and be in the kitchen. You guys can obviously see I have a whole channel about that. I set my life up in a way that allows me to do those things. I love to be outside in nature. Absolutely love it. So I became a homesteader. So I think in my experience, the women that are happiest, and not even just happy, joyful and content in their job as a mother or a homemaker, a stay-at-home mother in particular, are the women who have set their mothering life up around their hobbies and interests. Maybe if it wasn't homesteading or cooking or anything like that, maybe if fitness was my hobby or something like that, as a mother, I probably would have prioritized working out with my children every day, setting up a home gym somewhere instead of creating a homestead and incorporating that as part of my daily routine with my children. So my advice to a lot of mothers out there is, if you find yourself in a phase of life where you don't have time to complete your hobbies and interests, or you feel like the children are getting in the way of you being able to do that, you just need to set your life up in a way that your children can be a part of that. If art is your passion, fill your days with art with your children. Your children will benefit from it, and you will get to live out your passion every day. So my hobbies and interests are the things that you see me documenting on this channel. Here's an interesting question that I've never answered before. How are we planning ahead for when there are fewer hands to help and less mouths to feed? Will we take on other activities that we don't have room for in this current season of life? So we are not too far away from this. You know, my older boys are almost 17 and 15, and they are extremely capable helpers. You know, they're both 6 feet tall, very strong. They can do a lot of the heavy lifting on the homestead when Adam isn't here and he's at work. And so I've often thought about, what is the future going to look like as they're gone and I have less help like that? Well, the beautiful thing about having a large family is that there are children that are growing up that can take their place. And I have other helpers that can fill in for quite a while. But also, as my older children age and my little ones need me less, it will free up time for me to be able to do more on the homestead, just like how it was when they were little and they weren't able to help. I didn't have older helpers. But ultimately, we are at a place on our homestead where we are not interested in taking on any new work. We have worked so hard over the last 8 years to build our homestead to the point where it's functioning pretty efficiently and effectively for the needs of our family. I think at this point, our goals over the next 5 years are to take the chores and the work that we have to do on the homestead and find even better ways to do them, even more efficient ways to do them, so that as the children age and they're not here, the chores can maybe handle themselves in other ways. So for example, I was thinking about the chicken coops just like a couple weeks ago and how I want to really focus on changing those this year. Right now I have Grace, who's my 13-year-old. She's in charge of the chickens, and she goes out every day, twice a day, to water and feed, and she goes out and collects the eggs, and she also helps me clean the coops. That's her responsibility on the homestead, and she does such a wonderful job. But she's getting busier with her schoolwork, and she's getting busier with activities and things. I would really love to find a way to automate some of those chores to make them easier for little ones to even step in for her, and she can take over other responsibilities. So it would be things like setting up feeders that we can just dump bags of feed in and it would automatically dispense, and better waterers that wouldn't require her to go out twice a day, that would just, and so every year we kind of look around and we figure out how we can make the work easier for everyone. But those things cost money. So it's like people might be asking, well, why haven't you done that already? Well, because every year we found other areas that we've needed to focus on making more efficient, and we spent money to do that. Like, for example, in the last couple of years, it was figuring out more efficient ways to load and unload livestock. And so we spent resources on building an alleyway to do that, or to make the garden easier. You know, we spent a significant amount of money switching to raised beds with landscape fabric. Now this year's project will be making chicken chores more sustainable. And so I guess the point of all of this is, over the years, we get it more efficient to the point that when the children aren't here to help anymore, then things will be easy enough for me to manage on my own, or for the little ones to do. I don't foresee us taking on anymore as the children move out, but I do see us, as long as we have children in the house, keeping the animals that we have, because I think it's a benefit to them to help with them. I love having the food, and as the older children start their families, I can't wait to be able to bless them with the food. It would be lovely if we don't need all of the eggs that we use now, because there's half of the people living in the house, to be able to drop off, you know, dozens of eggs to my children and their families, and to drop off bushels of fruit from our mature fruit trees and bushels of produce from my garden. Or when we butcher a cow, if we don't need a whole steer, being able to drop meat off to bless our children. So I just see us maintaining what we're doing now, getting more efficient at it, and that is the goal. And then we're living the dream. You know, for so much time when we started our homestead, the dream was to do more and more and more and more and grow, and we were adding projects every year. But then it reached a point where it's like, but we don't really need to add more projects. If anything, I would like to downsize a little bit so that we can just enjoy what we're doing now. And I love that we're finally at that place. It feels really good. Okay, someone asked for advice for mothers with young children, for example, two children under the age of 2. And I was once that mother. My oldest 2 boys are 17 months apart in age, and I have always said that that was my hardest transition in motherhood. It wasn't going from no children to 1. It wasn't going from 7 children to 8. It was definitely going from 1 to 2, because it was learning how to divide my attention and energy now amongst 2 children versus, you know, when I just had 1. So I can sympathize with mothers who are struggling in that season of life, because it's one thing to go from one child to two when there's an age gap between them. It's a whole nother thing to go from one child to two when they're both essentially babies under the age of 2. And it was a very trying period of my life. I would be lying if I said I didn't struggle a little bit, but my struggle wasn't necessarily with the physical work. I think the biggest struggle when you only have 2 children and they're both so young is the mental boredom. I hate to say it, because I love being a mother. I love caring for my children. But there's only so many board books and cartoons and nursery rhymes and lullabies that you can deal with in a day before you feel like you're going to lose your mind. And I really did feel like that. Besides being very exhausted during that stage, I was just bored and tired. So there were a few things that I did to help myself during that season of life that maybe could help the mother that's asking this question. So the first thing I did is I prioritized the sleep in my little ones. Nap time was non-negotiable. Like, we were home. If we were out and about and I was out with friends, I came home for nap time. I didn't miss it. I prioritized that with my kids because they needed it to behave well and to be well rested and healthy, and I needed it for the break. And then the other thing Adam and I did is we prioritized nighttime sleep as well. When my children were that age, they woke very early in the morning. It was maybe 5 o'clock in the morning. They went down and they took a 1.5 to 2 hour nap in the afternoon, and they were in bed by 6:30 at night, and it was wonderful. Even if we were out with friends, we excused ourselves and came home to get them in bed at 6:30 at night, and being extremely rigid and strict with that bedtime routine and that sleep routine and not messing it up benefited us in many ways. The kids were healthy, the kids had good attitudes and weren't cranky and throwing tantrums and all of that. And then because they went to bed at 6:30 at night, it opened up our evenings to do whatever we wanted. That was when I got my house cleaned, so I didn't have to stress about that while I was caring for 2 babies during the day. That's when I worked in my garden. That's when, if I needed to run errands because Adam was home in the evening, I could go run and do that without having to haul 2 children under the age of 2 to the store. And then that's when Adam and I could hang out and connect and have time together. When kids go to bed at 6:30, you have all evening to watch a movie and prepare a dinner and just feel like a couple and be adults together. And it was lovely. So that's my big piece of advice, is to prioritize getting your children on a good sleep schedule and stick to it. Everyone will be happier for it. And the other piece of this relates to what I said before about the mental boredom. I had to, during that season of my life, have outlets to speak with other adults during the day. I'm in a whole different season of parenting right now where I have older children who interact with me, and we have wonderful conversations that stimulate me mentally. But that time when they were little like that, I would get so bored. And when you get bored like that, it can be depressing sometimes. And so what I found helpful was meeting up with friends frequently for play dates. I was at the park maybe 4 days a week when my kids were that little. And if we weren't going to the park, I was meeting up with other friends who had babies so that we could talk with one another. And then if I couldn't get out of the house, let's say the kids were sick or something, back then they had these baby forums online that I would connect with other mothers online in that way to help talk with other adults during the day. Or I would call my sister who was raising children at the same time that were little, and we would talk sometimes every day if we needed to. Nowadays there's social media where you can, connect to other mothers, but that is so important. You need to have an outlet to communicate with other human beings that aren't requiring you to just read them board books and sing them nursery rhymes all day. So that is my main advice to help mothers who are in that stage of life. So here's a question. Are there things you did differently with your older children that we don't do with the younger? Absolutely. Isn't that the case with all parents? I know I can speak for myself that when I started out with my older boys, they're my oldest children, I was maybe a little more idealistic. I was much more strict and rigid in certain things. And then as time goes on, your ideals maybe start to change as reality sets in. And maybe you let go of some of the standards that you realize aren't necessarily healthy or realistic for your children. My older 4, I was definitely a lot more rigid with their schoolwork and their homeschooling at young ages. We did at the table, school at home. And my older children benefited from that in many ways, but I would say that that might have also contributed to some things like test anxiety and things that then the younger ones that have had a much looser school schedule in these younger years, they don't have maybe those issues, and they've benefited in other ways from, you know, the freedom that they've had. And so I have 8 children, and there is a very clear divide. There is a 3-year break between my 4th and 5th child. My older 4 were born in our old life in the suburbs in our old house. My younger 4 were all born here on this homestead in this life that we live now. Sometimes it almost feels like 2 very different sets of children. The ways they were raised were very different. I mean, at the core, our values are all still the same, but their experiences are going to be different just based on the fact that we were younger when we were raising the older 4. The younger 4 have the role models in their older siblings to look up to, and that's going to shape who they are a little differently. My younger 4 have been given freedom, not just in terms of schoolwork that I talked about, but just freedom to roam. We live on a property kind of a little further out that has a fence, and so my 3 little boys will often be found just wandering around outside on adventures, and I'll have to call them in for lunch, and they're just doing their own thing. They have insane amounts of freedom that my older children didn't have because they were raised in the suburbs at that age, where I kind of had to helicopter them and keep an eye on them. And so I'm not sure that there are benefits and there are cons to each of those situations, but that's the beauty of life, is that we're all raised in different ways, even within the same family. Our birth order and how our parents have grown and changed is going to shape our personality, and it makes us all different and unique, and together we make one beautiful family. So definitely, to answer the question, there are things that we did differently with the older ones versus the younger ones, and I think it has to do with the amount of freedom that we have allowed the younger children as compared to what the older children had. Here's one I've answered before, but it's common and it was asked again, so I'll go ahead and answer it again. When Gabriel, our child with the anaphylactic dairy allergies, if he leaves home, he turns 17 here in a couple months, so we are just potentially a year or so away from the point that he could move out if he wanted to. I don't foresee him moving out until he finishes college, but we'll see. But when he moves out, will we get a dairy animal and start incorporating more dairy into our diet here on the homestead? At this point, I don't see that as a possibility. First of all, as long as Gabriel lives anywhere close by where he will be wanting to visit frequently, I always want my home to be a safe space for him. I always want him to feel like he's welcome for a meal. And if my kitchen were processing dairy in any way, it would no longer be safe for him. And as his mom, I just want him to always feel welcome. So I don't foresee us eating dairy from that point of view. But let's say Gabriel moves halfway across the world and he's only visiting home once or twice a year, if that. Oh, I can't even imagine. But let's say that were the case, and his safety wasn't so much of a concern. Would we add dairy to our diet? And I don't really think that we would. I know that we've just gotten so used to cooking without dairy and not eating it that when Adam and I went out of town last week, we both ate a lot of dairy just because we could. We were away from home, and it didn't sit well in my stomach. Both of us, I think, just felt off from consuming all the dairy. And I know our bodies could adjust if we added it back to our diet, but because we're so used to not eating it and we found ways to get all the nutrients that we need without it, I just don't see us, making that a huge part of our diet. Would we maybe keep some cheese in the house so that we could have cheese with our pizza or something like that? I could see that. Like, there are certain meals that I could see dairy not being a main portion of the meal, but just being something that we could add to it to enhance it, and I could see that being a treat every now and then, but I really don't see it being something that would be worth us wanting to have a dairy animal or something like that. Okay, a question about the dogs. What breed are our dogs, and are they popular in our area? So the dogs are Turkish Baz Shepherds. They are a Turkish, obviously, shepherd breed. In Turkey, where they're from, they're a landrace breed. That means that various regions of Turkey, the dogs kind of evolved with There are a bunch of Turkish Shepherds that all kind of look similar, but they have distinct differences if you really pay attention and study the breeds. So we have Boz Shepherds. There's another form of a Turkish Shepherd dog that's a Kangal. They have Malakli. There's another called Akbash. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. In America, we tend to classify them all as Anatolian Shepherds, but there are very distinct differences. So ours are called Boz Shepherds. What makes them unique compared to other types of Anatolian Shepherds is their size. They're a little larger. They're boxier in shape. They have a squarer head. If you can put a bunch of pictures of these different breeds side by side, you could definitely tell the differences. Are they popular in our area? Not at all. I don't know anyone else where we live that has Boz Shepherds. In fact, you rarely even see what would be classified as Anatolians or Kangals in our area. I think the most popular livestock guardian breed, which is what our Bozes are, would be Great Pyrenees. You see a lot of those as livestock guardians around here, but you never see Boz Shepherds around here. We had to get our dogs from Texas when we got them. Actually, Tom, our male, his mother was pregnant with him and she came over from Turkey, so he was conceived in Turkey. We absolutely love the breed. Adam fell in love with them because we were looking for livestock guardians, but we were also looking for family guardians. And Boz Shepherds, compared to some other livestock guardian breeds, are both. They are fiercely protective of their people as well as livestock. It's just innate in them. And when we first moved to our house here, we have some wild packs of dogs that kind of run around here. There are some people on our street that don't have fences, and their dogs were ending up on our property the first year we lived here. There were 2 German Shepherds, a total of 3 pit bulls that were kind of roaming around and would be in our backyard. And my thinking was, we moved to the country to let our children have freedom, and I couldn't trust my children being outside with these loose pit bulls running around. So we put up a fence, and Adam decided we need to get dogs that were bigger and better protectors than the ones that could potentially dig under the fence and get onto our property. So that is why we chose the Boz. They're a breed that can take down a wolf. Like, there are videos of them taking down a wolf. So they're just great dogs. We absolutely love the breed, and obviously our love for them has just multiplied. We now have 4 of these dogs, and I don't think the videos do them justice. They are massive, but they're like nanny dogs. They're really big, but they just, Tom, our 180-pound male, will just lay down and let my babies crawl and snuggle up right next to him. We love them. So one day I would love to do a video specifically about them, because people have a lot of questions about, how much they eat and how they, how we train them to the property and things. So I will do that in the future. But for now, I hope that answers the question. Here's some more lighthearted questions. Some people asked, what do I use on my hair? And nothing special. Honestly, I use whatever shampoo we buy that's on sale. I'm not brand specific. I was just blessed with very thick hair. I get it from my mother. There are 4 daughters in my family, and we all got my mother's thick hair. She is in her mid-60s and has the most beautiful head of salt and pepper hair I've ever seen, and I'm just hoping that I inherited it because it's gorgeous. But for me, myself, you guys know I wear a head covering a lot, and so I really only wash my hair once a week. I think that helps keep it healthy. It doesn't dry it out, because I do have very thick, almost horse-like texture hair that if I wash it too frequently, it can kind of dry out and get almost poofy. So it does much better if I only wash it once a week. I don't use heat on my hair to dry it. I let it air dry. I don't use heat to style it unless I'm going on a date with Adam or something, and sometimes I'll use hot rollers to kind of curl it and give it some volume, and I'll wear it down for him. But otherwise, I just kind of leave it alone. A lot of the times it's in a ponytail or a bun or a braid, and I just feel like one of the secrets to healthy hair is just not messing with it a lot, not using a lot of product in it, just kind of letting it do its thing. And then the other fun question, I got a lot of questions about the dresses that I wear. This dress is not a nursing dress, and that is because I actually weaned, not Elizabeth, I weaned Elizabeth like 9 years ago. I weaned Hannah a week ago today because Adam and I were going out of town, and prior to leaving, she was only nursing twice a day, and it was only for to get herself to sleep. So when she would wake up in the morning early at like 5 o'clock in the morning, I would pull her into bed and just nurse her, and she would literally latch on for 2 minutes and fall back asleep. And it was kind of lovely, to be honest. And then to get her down for naps, she would kind of latch on and just fall asleep. So it was no longer for nourishment. It was just a habit to help get to sleep. So when Adam and I went out of town, I just decided she was going to go 36 to 48 hours without nursing anyways. We will just end it. And she's 17 months. My average for weaning my children is usually about 18 months. So she's right there. We were getting close to it anyways. It was a really good opportunity. So all that to say, it's been a week now that she hasn't nursed. There have been some adjustments to getting her down for naps, and she's been waking early in the morning, which isn't wonderful, but we're dealing with it and we're adjusting. So the dresses that you used to see me wearing prior to like a week ago, were all nursing dresses. A lot of you noticed that they kind of looked like two pieces, and that's because the top had a panel that would pull up for easy nursing. That was used to be one of my complaints about, I love to wear dresses, but when I'm nursing, if it's not a button-down dress, it's so, hard to nurse in a dress. So I invested in nursing dresses after I had Hannah, and most of them were from Super Cute Dresses by Ringer. I'll put a link in the description. I'm not affiliated or anything, just a fan of their dresses. They're really good quality. And that is most of them. I also have some cheapy nursing dresses I got from Amazon that I've worn in a few videos, and a couple from Latched Mama. For the most part, they're from Super Cute Dresses. A lot of my other dresses that you see me wear like this, they're from Amazon, or there's a place called Janie Lane Boutique I have a few dresses from. But I love dresses, and a lot of people, why do I love dresses so much? Well, the main reason is they make me feel feminine and pretty, but also with weight fluctuations of having, so many pregnancies over the last 17 years, I found pants to be really hard to wear with the weight fluctuations. I would need like 10 sizes of pants in my closet, and I would just have to switch them out as my weight changed. Whereas a skirt or a dress is extremely forgiving. I can wear them when I'm pregnant. I can wear them when I'm postpartum. It just, for me, it was a much more efficient use of my closet space and made me feel better because I don't have things like clinging to my legs when I'm trying to lose weight. Which reminds me of another question I got was, do I struggle with appearance and insecurities after pregnancy, and do I have any advice about that? Yes, what woman doesn't struggle with insecurities after having a baby? Your body changes so much, and to be completely honest, I'm someone who struggled with insecurities about my appearance and my weight long before I had children. Many of you know I had a background in dance. I was a modern dance major in college and just struggled with body image issues due to the years of that. And so having children really actually healed me of a lot of those issues. Seeing what my body can do and is capable of gave me a huge appreciation for my body beyond just the male gaze or what it looks like on the outside. So that has been really healing, but I would be lying if I said I don't struggle after I have a baby with the weight fluctuations. And so what is my advice? My advice is just to be patient with yourself, especially if you're like me and you're an older mom. My first couple babies in my 20s, I was able to bounce back in 9 months to 12 months, The older I get now, I had my last baby at 41, and I didn't lose any weight, 0 pounds the whole first year after I had her. It wasn't until this past January that the weight started coming off. It's because she was finally nursing less to the point where my hormones were allowing me to lose weight. And you just have to be patient. Buy yourself, like I mentioned, buy yourself some nice postpartum clothes. Buy yourself some nursing dresses or some things that make you feel good. Because I think what affects your mood when you're postpartum like that is having clothes that cling to your body in ways that don't feel comfortable or don't necessarily fit right. And so investing in some clothes that make you feel a little better about yourself and are more comfortable is really going to help. And that's my main advice. Just be kind to yourself. You brought life into this world. And I know it's easier said than done, but your body did miraculous things. Give it some grace. You'll bounce back. It might take a little work. It might take some calorie restriction. It might take working out, but you can't do those things when you're nursing or you have a new baby. So you just have to You know, give yourself some grace. Wait till you get to a point where you can do those things when they're nursing a little less, and eventually the weight will come off. Here's a question. What are my favorite freeze-dried foods and ones that we tried and didn't like? So it's a good question to answer in the month of May if you're interested in a freeze dryer. Mine's just over there. They are having a sale. It's one of their best sales of the year, so I'll leave a link in the description so you can check them out. A lot of people ask, we have a medium harvest rate freeze dryer. We have one with the oil pump. It's the Premier pump, and I have no problems changing the oil. In fact, I need to do it before I start my next batch, so maybe in next week's video I'm going to show you how easy it is to change the oil on the machine. I'll definitely remember to include that in next week's compilation video. But as far as what are my favorite freeze-dried foods, well, my absolute favorite things to freeze dry are herbs and spices and things. Like, there is no comparison to the flavor and aroma of freeze-dried herbs compared to when I used to dehydrate them in a dehydrator or even hang them to dry. Freeze drying just retains so much more flavor, and I've expanded my herb garden since having the freeze dryer specifically for that reason, because there is no need for me to buy herbs from the store anymore when I can preserve them in such an amazing way. Another favorite thing to preserve are excess eggs. I find that freeze-dried eggs, when you rehydrate them, they make scrambled eggs that taste just like regular, fresh scrambled eggs. So that's another huge blessing. In terms of meals, soups are one of my favorite things to freeze dry, like chili, for example, because it's so easy. We just have leftover soup. I will just pour it on a tray, freeze dry it, put it in a thing, and then all you have to do is add hot water and stir it around, and it tastes amazing. It tastes just like the soup, and it doesn't take up any freezer space. So I love that. I've accumulated so many just like leftover freeze-dried soups that I've said if we take the kids camping or something, it would be really fun. Everybody could just pick a soup for every meal of the day, and we would just have miscellaneous soups. We have so many of them. And then in terms of snacks, I just love freeze-dried fruit. Nothing compares to there's something about the freeze-drying process that concentrates the sugars and the flavor in the fruit that it almost tastes like candy. And I'm not someone who can eat sugar. I'm on a diet specifically where I don't eat sugar. So eating freeze-dried fruit for me is the closest thing I'll come to candy, and I absolutely love it. So strawberries, watermelon, pineapple is one of the best, absolutely. I can't really think of a fruit that I freeze-dried that I didn't like. I can't really think of one. So, those are my favorites. Now, what are my least favorite freeze-dried things that I didn't like? I am not a fan of freeze-dried vegetables that are rehydrated to eat as like a side dish. So, for example, I would never freeze-dry green beans to then rehydrate and just eat with my meat as a side dish. I like freeze-dried vegetables to put into soup because they're so convenient. You've got a pot of boiling broth and you just shake in different freeze-dried vegetables. And because they slow cook in the broth and things, they soften up and the texture isn't really that noticeable. But I find that freeze-drying makes the vegetables, when you rehydrate them, almost rubbery. It's not as bad as dehydrated vegetables. When you rehydrate them and try to eat them, those almost have a crunch to them that is cooked, But freeze-drying, it almost powders them and makes them this weird texture that just isn't fun. I can't explain it. You'd have to eat it to know what I'm talking about. So that is probably my least favorite thing. So if I'm freeze-drying vegetables, I'm using them in soups or things that I'm going to be slow cooking. So I always get questions about homeschool curriculum. I feel bad. I really need to do a whole separate video about homeschooling curriculum. I kind of stopped including homeschooling information in my weekly videos because there were a lot of people saying they weren't interested in that. They're just here for the homesteading and the food content. So maybe I need to do some homeschool videos that are kind of separate from that, maybe midweek. And if I ever get a chance where I have the time for that, I would love to do it. But I'll just do a quick overview of homeschool curriculum choices. We're not the kind of family that just picks one company and all of the children do that all through all of the grades. I found that all of my children are different and kind of have had different needs at different stages of life. There are a few tried and true curricula that I've used with all of the kids. For example, I always use My Father's World for kindergarten and first grade. I use Saxon math for first grade through third grade. I use teaching textbooks, math from fourth grade all the way through high school. I'm trying to think of middle school years are very, and even elementary school years are very eclectic. All the kids have had different. I think with my next kids coming up, like Levi's entering second grade next year, he's using Master Books language arts curriculum. Some of my middle schoolers are using Abeka language arts. I've transitioned most of my middle schoolers and high schoolers to Abeka language arts, and I cannot say enough good things about it. It's extremely rigorous. It has done wonders for my children. Gabriel actually graduates here at the end of the month. He's done homeschooling with me. He'll be a full-time college student next year, and he transitioned beautifully from his Abeka high school language arts to college level writing without a problem. So I can't sing the praises of Abeka language arts enough. It's done well. I also forgot that leading up to Abeka for writing skills, the Institute for Effectiveness in Writing, IEW, whatever it is, they have several writing programs, particularly the DVD programs, that did a really great job for several of my children in improving their writing skills. And then for high school, we've pretty much exclusively switched to Abeka for pretty much everything, for their history and science and all of the other subjects, except for foreign languages. We're using Rosetta Stone for David's Japanese right now. Yeah, just like an eclectic mix of stuff. Grace is taking sign language next year, and she's using some kind of DVD curriculum. So I'll do a more specific video outlining all the choices for all of the children sometime. But yeah, we just like a mix of stuff. And we're very loose with our children. We stress reading, writing, and arithmetic from kindergarten through about 6th or 7th grade. And all of the other subjects are more just unschooled through life. They get a lot of their science from the Homestead. We do a lot of, watching documentaries together and reading books and things to learn about history and science and all of these other subjects. And then once middle school hits, we really start to then get more structured with the curricula outside of reading, writing, and arithmetic. And so we've been using Abeka for a lot of that with great results. As I said, Gabe's transitioned really well to college. I'm very excited. I have 1 down, 7 more to go. So, all right. A lot of variations of this question. I know it's a common one because I often wonder this about other mothers too, but question is, do I experience burnout, and how do I deal with that burnout? How do I unwind and energize myself when I get that way? So I'm going to talk about burnout in 2 different ways. The first one is a yearly kind of seasonal burnout that I experience, and the other one is just your normal day-to-day burnout from life in general. So on the Homestead, I definitely deal with burnout consistently 2 times a year. The first time of year is always kind of in the spring, early spring, like March and April. I'm just coming out of that burnout season. It happens to me every year, and it has to do with the fact that we're cooped up all winter. I'm someone, as I mentioned before, that thrives in nature and being outside, and I'm just sick of being indoors, and I want sunshine and warm weather and plants and all of the wonderful things that come with being outside in the summer. Also, spring is a time where I'm just kind of sick of being inside and doing schoolwork, and so I just get burnt out with school, and I'm ready for a break. So that's my consistent first time of year that I deal with burnout. And then I always get it again in early fall, usually in like mid to late September. And I think a lot of that has to do with we're just nearing the end of the growing season. I'm just sick of canning. I'm sick of going into the garden even. And on top of it, school has typically started up by the beginning of September. And so that added another layer to my work that by the end of September, I'm just like, I am done. I'm burnt out with Homestead work, and that's the point that I usually give up on the garden, and just whatever happens, whatever we can harvest from it without me having to worry about maintaining and weeding, we just deal with it. So in both of those situations, in the spring and the fall when I have burnout, it's just a sign that I need to take something off of my plate. I've reached a point where there's too much going on. And so in the fall, like I said, I usually take garden work off my plate. I'm just done and I let it go. And then in the spring, when I experience that burnout, it's usually a time where I start like ramping down with school from the year. That's something I need to take off my plate. Or this year, when I felt that burnout in the spring, I took a step back, and I've been sharing a lot less on Instagram because I was just at burnout mode. There's only so many hours in the day. We're very busy with activities this year. Something had to give, and that seemed like the most logical place to take a step back. And so that's what I did. But in terms of normal burnout from life, I am human. Everybody's human. We're all going to experience burnout. And I think my burnout on a daily or like a normal life basis has more to do with like overstimulation than busyness. I mean, I have 8 kids and a homestead, and I homeschool. It's always busy. But there are times when I get overstimulated on a consistent basis, day after day, to the point where it feels like burnout. And for me, that's a sign that I'm letting outside noise affect me too much. I love my kids. I love my work on the homestead. I love homeschooling them. But the outside stuff is what makes it feel like too much and burns me out. So it's a sign that instead of putting a podcast on while I'm doing my chores and my cleaning and stuff, maybe I need silence for a while. Instead of having background noise, I just need to be a little less stimulated. And one of the greatest things for me when I'm feeling that sense of overstimulation is to touch grass, is to go outside and take a walk in my garden. I actually have a little path that I go through. I go out and I just walk through and I check on things, and it's like 5 minutes of time. It's enough time for me to take some deep breaths, check on the plants, be in nature, and it like literally calms my nervous system down to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm no longer overstimulated. I'm going to go inside and shut off all the extra noise, give my focus to the children, calm myself down, and we can get back to work. So that's what I do to help myself. Okay, here's the final question that I think I can get to today, and it is, can you give a breakdown of your day and how you manage to complete everything? Well, I have a whole bunch of day in the life videos that will show you how I break my day down. I try to be pretty consistent with my routine because I just find children thrive with that consistency, and I as a mother tend to thrive with that consistency. There are seasons of life. I had another question that said, how do you deal with all of your responsibilities when you have the flu or you have morning sickness and things like that? So there are times where routine has to go out the window, and you just have to survive and do whatever it takes to get meals on the table and keep the house from completely falling apart. But given regular amounts of energy and good health, keeping a consistent routine is really important. You can see those routines in the videos that I'll link in the description. But really, like a simple breakdown of my day. I typically wake lately at about 5 o'clock. That's when Hannah wakes up, sometime between 5 and 5:30. I've been taking her out to the couch and just kind of snuggling her. I get some good one-on-one time with her before everybody else starts to wake up. Adam wakes up a little after 6. That's my key to come out into the kitchen. I get coffee and tea going, start breakfast and things. Adam leaves for work usually at about 7 o'clock, and then my day begins. By that point, little ones are starting to wake up. I feed them breakfast, get the big kids up, they do their chores, and then it's time to start school. School occupies most of our mornings until we get to lunchtime, and then after lunch, it's getting little ones down for naps, kind of cleaning up the kitchen from lunch and things, and then afternoons are kind of a wild card. If I got all the schoolwork done in the morning, then afternoons are for housework, or lately it's been garden work, getting the garden planted. Some days we have activities that start, I need to leave the house even at 3 o'clock to get the kids to activities, and so a lot of the afternoon is then doing the meal prep to get dinner ready so that when we get back from activities, we can eat smoothly without, having to wait too long. Adam gets home from work, usually 5:30 to 6 o'clock. We eat, if it's a night when we don't have activities, and then Adam takes over pretty much about 7 o'clock, or on. He's got the kids. He kind of handles the evening routine. That's my time. I had a question about what is my personal care routine like. If I want to do anything completely for myself, it's going to be after 7 o'clock and before I go to bed. So I might run out to the garden again and just kind of do some putzing around and whatever, brings me joy. I might do some writing. I might edit some videos for YouTube or something. I might get a shower and do all of the personal care things that I need to do for myself that typically get swept under the rug when I'm getting ready early in the morning pretty quickly. And so yeah, and then I'm typically in bed no later than 10 o'clock. Some days I literally, my head hits the pillow at 9:30 and I just pass out and I'm out. But sometimes I'll lay there on my phone and kind of check some things. But I usually try to put the phone down and go to bed at about 10. So that's what my day looks like. So check out a video if you want a more in-depth look at what that looks like. But otherwise, I could go on. I have more questions here, but I've rambled long enough. I'll try to split this into another video in the future. But I will be back next week with more of my typical on the homestead content, kind of show you now that the garden's in, some of the other things that are going on and some of the ways that we've been eating. We've been getting harvest from the garden it's been lovely. So I'll kind of show you some of the meals that we're making with that. All right, friends, I hope you enjoyed this little Q&A. I will see you next week. Until then, be blessed. Bye.